Welcome to Matters of Decorum. I'm Scott Corum. This is what matters to me. Horror musings, day 3. I talked about my favorite horror movie, and I talked about my favorite horror story. Movies and stories are fascinating forms of entertainment and immersive, and you get involved. Computer games are another immersive form of entertainment, somehow more immersive in some ways, because you are an active participant in a computer game. You are making decisions and watching the consequences of those decisions. A good computer game gives you the illusion that you have a certain amount of free will, even though by necessity most computer games will put you on the rails. There's a limited amount of space. You're not actually wandering around in a complete, expansive, immersive world, with a couple of exceptions. I do love me some GTA. But there's a story being told, and you are participating in the story while murdering things. I'm a big fan of first-person shooters. And I have played a number of the horror-based first-person shooters. Gosh, back in the old Bungie days, Pathways into Darkness. It was old, and it was 2D trying to be 3D, kind of like the original Doom, and it wasn't as good as their follow-up game, Marathon. Marathon also kind of counts as a horror game in many ways. And arguably, the incarnations of Doom certainly incorporate horror elements, even though the presence of really big guns that can do away with most of the horror elements is makes the horror genre questionable. It's got hell and it's got demons and it's all rad because you can blow them up. That's not necessarily a horror game. Action, adventure, and just because it's got things in it, it's not a horror game unless you are at certain points in time induced to fear. Which coincidentally is the title of my favorite horror computer game. There's a series of them, F.E.A.R, F-E.A.R, or First Encounter Assault Recon. F.E.A.R was a unique experience, a horrifying experience, and I have not played more than the first 2 games because the ending of the first game affected me, or the ending of the second game affected me so very badly. I'm going to do a summary, a little walkthrough of very general terms. It's a little triggery because F.E.A.R is a disturbing game. It involved very dark, very mature concepts, and I'm not gonna lie, it was visceral on a number of levels. Gameplay in F.E.A.R is, it's a first-person shooter. It's run around, shoot things. There are terrorists and there are monsters. It's heavily zombie influenced. There's a few other things there. There's some things you can shoot at that it doesn't really matter, no matter what gun you're holding. Gameplay is smooth. It has pretty good graphics for the time it was produced. I'd say that the first game still kind of holds up. Second game certainly does. One mechanic I really disliked. F.E.A.R had the worst tactical flashlight in the history of flashlights. And to enhance the atmosphere of the same game and the situation, you had a flashlight that could only stay on for about 35-40 seconds. You got a bar for your flashlight power dropping, and then it was out. And that bar had to refill all the way over the course of 20-25 seconds before you had turn it back on and have light again. First Encounter Assault Recon, the organization you're working for, is this first response, heavily tactical. We're going to give you all the armor and weapons that you need to go in there in a terrorist situation and take people out. And that's awesome. And so I've got these high-tech weapons, and I've got this high-tech armor, and comm gear, and I got motion trackers, and it's all great. But, well, this way, your flashlight's never going to run out of power because it regenerates its own power. It just, takes a little while to do it every so often, and it's... While I'm playing this game, multiple times, I'm shouting at the screen, I got $5 in my pocket. I'll go down to the store. I can go to any store in the world with $5 in my pocket and buy a better flashlight than the one that you gave me. It almost seemed like it was time to, okay, I'm coming around a corner, I'm down the stairs, here's the door, flashlight out. It wasn't even that you could tactically time when the flashlight, it was all exploration, like a good first-person shooter. You don't know when you're going to need light, and without the light in many scenes, it's just completely freaking black. So, kudos for F.E.A.R, but for God's sake, it's a damn flashlight. Learn how flashlights work. Go buy a flashlight, turn one on, and walk around with it, and be astonished that, hey, wait, it's actually staying on. I can actually see what's in front of me the whole time. What is this magic? Sorry. You get dropped into a situation. There's a guy. He's got some terrorists, and you need to take him out. I have a library full of games to start like that. There's terrorists, and some of them have enhancements. There's other things going on. There's biotech and things that are a little bit beyond biotech going on. And every so often, just every so often, you come around a corner or you look down a corridor and there's a little girl. 8, 9 something, a little dress, teddy bear, and the works. And you look, and then there's a noise. So you check the noise, and you come back, and the girl's gone. Spooky. But you go on. Your character has psychic abilities. You don't get this straight up, but you start refinding files on your team and yourself. You're a little bit of a mystery. You don't have a clear history. You've got, he was raised in an orphanage, or there's a program. He's been recruited out of this testing facility. Weird, but you start to get flashes. The first game is discovering the history of one Alma Wade. Little girl. She's dead. That's the psychic projection of the actual Alma, who was discovered by her father, a scientist, to be particularly gifted, to the point where her gifts were actually dangerous. Telekinesis and lighting things on fire, real Carrie Firestarter kind of stuff. So they had to keep her sedated, unconscious, comatose, they thought. But they still needed to study her and study how her genome reacted. So while she was comatose, as she got to an age where it was functional, they impregnated her. She had moments of clarity and consciousness only when she was giving birth, and then they would put her back under. And at some point, after she had several children, she died from it. the tests and the procedures and the stress on her body and the chemicals, too much for her. She never got past her teen years. Oh, being dead didn't stop her. After she died, she got up and killed her father and a number of the other scientists involved in the project. And by that time in the game, you're kind of cheering for her. Oh man, I've been looking at these corpses and this stuff's horrible. Oh, this is why that happened? You go, girl. And you barely make it out of the situation alive. You got to nuke something. There's a huge explosion. And the last thing you find out is that amongst those files, Alma Wade's your mother. Creepy, shocking, haunting. But Alma's not gone. F.E.A.R 2 comes out. And you're hunting another terrorist. Said Alma had a couple of kids, didn't I? Yeah. The terrorist knows you. The terrorist is your half-brother. And you get more flashbacks, more flash forwards. You're starting to see the future. And this is where the game gets amazing. Because it uses this to get a reaction out of the player. It uses this to manipulate the fear levels of the player. And a game that can do that is masterful. I like BioShock as a horror game. A little tangent here. I like BioShock as a horror game mostly because BioShock managed to get one jump scare out of the player every game. There's at least one scene in every BioShock where you're coming around and you're looking at stuff and you've checked the room, you go into this corner and okay, there's a thing to root there, and oh look, there's a thing to read, okay. And you turn around and there's a monster right there. And you jump and you pull the trigger. I'm big on ammo conservation in my first-person shooters. I never know when the next bullet's going to come from, so if you can get me to panic fire a shot or two, you're doing a really good job. The atmosphere in BioShock is great, and that. So they managed to, with the storyline and the stuff, they managed to manipulate emotions pretty good in BioShock. I mean, really good. But F.E.A.R, they're zombies, and they're ghosts, and you can do stuff with them, but it's hard. They're a single zombie or 4 or 5 are a monstrous thing to deal with. And you find out that these biotech corporations have been experimenting on a lot of people. A lot of them. There are bodies piled up off-screen or on all over the place from the unethical, immoral testing that was done to try and refine these abilities and these powers, and you're more than just one random thing in this process. You're one of the penultimate outputs of it, and you're only starting to come into this. You don't develop much in the way of powers you can really control in the game, but the flashes, it gets eerie. You still see Alma every so often, the little girl, the psychic projection, but then you also see the real Alma every so often, and it's never a good thing. This young woman, nude, emaciated, desiccated, dead, walking, long, stringly black hair, slightly glowing eyes. When she shows up, shit's about to get amazingly bad, because she's going to manifest psychic powers. There's going to be a storm of telekinesis and fire and rage and pain. And if you can convey that there's a storm of rage and pain in a computer game, kudos. The designers did a magnificent job of that. Remember one scene, I walked into a train station. There were some guys from another military unit already there, setting up their forward base. And they were calling out to me, "Hey, how's it going?" got pretty good to get this far, man. We only just managed to get in here. It's rough out there. Zombies everywhere." And the lights flicker, and the lights come back up, and Alma is standing right there behind them. And I wanted to cry out. I wanted to be able to yell in the game, tell them to duck, tell them to move. I yelled. I yelled while I was playing, and I probably scared my wife. The lights flickered, Alma was gone, and the guys 20 feet in front of me are like, what was that? And then the trains started flying and crashing into them, and they got crushed and burned, and they screamed. And there was nothing I could do. Stand there, watch it happen. Couldn't move forward fast enough to nudge them out of the way. I couldn't shoot them, put them out of their misery fast enough. It's horrible to watch. There are NPCs in the game that you know, that you get to know, that you get to trust, that are in your ear talking to you, getting you through these situations, and sometimes they don't make it. But there's one scene in particular. So well done. You're in about a third of the way in. You have a flash forward. You have a psychic flash. It's a cinematic scene. There's actually not a cinematic scene. It's in gameplay. There's a bridge. You're in an underground complex of some type. This big open area underground, just full of these body canisters. Canisters are there are corpses in them. Lots of them. It's one of the big experiments that they'd had all these people that they'd put in and experimented on. They all died, and you're seeing the scene in black and white. There's a bridge to get from where you're at to some kind of control room on the far side, and it's a dream sequence. You can't really walk backwards. There's only that way to go. The game doesn't progress till you get to the other side, so you got to cross the bridge. So you cross the bridge, and as you go, there's moaning and wind and screams in the distance, and the ghosts of all of the people in all of these hundreds of canisters just on these racks in the middle of this huge open area, all come out of the canisters, just floating, arms wide, desiccated corpses, blank eyes, floating towards you. And you can't shoot them, and you can't yell, and you're not going to make it to the far side in time, and you run for it, and the ghosts reach for you, and hundreds of them are there, and they get to you, and you wake up. You're back in action, and that took me a minute to get past. Okay, that's fine. I got it. Towards the end of the game, you realize that was a prescient moment when you are in an area in an underground complex, and you've been reading about all of these bodies that are there. The life supports failed, that they were doing experiments, and they had them in suspension, and they failed all at once, and some of them might have woken up, but they all just died in the canisters. That sounds familiar. Oh God, that sounds familiar. And you come to this doorway, and there's a bridge. At the far side, there's another doorway to some kind of control room, and you look out there, and yeah, there's the canisters. That's the chamber. It's the same chamber. It's the same chamber, and it's full of the same canisters, and it's the same bridge, and that's the same door. Can't go back. There's no story back there. Everything you got to do, your objectives are all ahead of you. Cross that bridge, through that door. All you got to do is cross the bridge. All you got to do is cross the bridge. Couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. I sat there at the computer for 5 minutes looking across that bridge. I went back and I explored. I was looking for vents or tunnels or some way to get in around that area. Because what I did not want to do was cross that bridge. Okay, I'd gotten a psychic message from the future. I had seen what was going to happen. I couldn't cross that bridge. Maybe I could run or sprint. Like, I got up from the computer. I went. I got a glass of water. I paced for a few minutes, maybe more than a few. I had to do gut checks. I had to summon my resolve. I had to be brave enough to sit down at my computer and hit the W key to go all the way across the bridge. Reloaded all my guns, had my hotkeys ready for swapping out if I ran out of ammo. Not that I thought it was going to help, but it was the only control I had over this situation. And I walked across the bridge, and nothing happened. It would have been an anticlimax if I got attacked by ghosts at that point in time. If zombies had come out of the control room or whatever had happened, anything that happened would have been an anticlimax. Anything that happened would have been, that was bad, but it wasn't hundreds of ghosts coming at me that I couldn't do anything about that. Anything but that was going to be. So nothing happened. I danced. I got to the far side. I breathed a sigh of relief. I stood up. I jumped up a little bit because I'd done it. It was conquering a fear. It was amazing. And that experience in a damn computer game. That is not easy to accomplish. And it is so well engineered. You're not in this complex alone. One, Alma's down here with you, and that's never a good thing. But Alma's not Alma all the time, and that starts getting even worse because there's the little girl Alma, and there's the grown-up undead Alma, and they are at odds. The little girl is just a psychic projection of the older one, but it's a psychic projection of a older, more innocent part of her mind. She wants to help. Every so often, she'll show up when you have no way out of a situation, when you are outgunned and you've got no cover and you're about to die. She'll show up and she'll help, little girl style, by giggling and pointing and saying just a second, and then everyone dies horribly. And she says you can go on. And older Alma, she's not around as much, but she wants to kill you, you think. Murders everything around you. But you're one of her kids. And she recognizes that, apparently. There's also a dude down here, well, one of her kids, one of her other children, and someone who is aware of her history, who is able psychically for different reasons, part of a different branch of the experiment, and he is trying to get to her to release her from the complex. It's been a while. Alma has to be removed from play. She just has to be. The first encounter assault recon is there to remove Alma Wade from play. There's a zombie plague. That's mostly her influence. The cities are falling and burning, and there's only one thing to do. Can't kill her outright, but you're tracking her down, and your people back at base are working on what you're going to do when you get there. It's this complex, this research complex that was built around her, around Alma and her abilities, and the research done based on her. That's cost so many lives and is costing so many more. There's a machine at the middle of the complex. They designed it off of Alma's pattern, but a person could sit in this machine and it would magnify their own psychic abilities if they had any. And they figured, your folks back at base, if you could get to that machine before the other guy gets to the machine, because the other guy gets to the machine, he's going to try and free Alma from whatever confinements this base is imposing on her. You've got to get to it first, or get to it as well. No more than one person get into it, apparently. And you have to end her. And as tragic a figure as she is, and as much as you might sympathize with her situation, because she was not treated well at all, and you don't want to hurt her, even though there's all this murder going on. You still have to end her. And maybe you can do it peacefully. Maybe you have as I'm going along, I'm like, maybe I have the option to let her go quietly. Maybe I don't know what I'm going to be able to do in this machine. It's horrific. You have to kill monsters and people who are possessed, and zombies and zombies and zombies. And there are paramilitary guys in here after you, and because you're competing organizations trying to get to this thing. Some people want to be able to use this power and ability for their own military ends. And as far as I can tell, F.E.A.R was just in there to make it stop. There's a fire. You get to the middle of the place. There's a chair. Now's when you find out that you have to be strapped into the chair for it to work. But that's okay. The chair will strap you in automatically. And my people back at base are radioing me to tell me this is it. This is the only way to do it. You got to get in the chair. You got to get strapped in. That doesn't seem like a good idea. My gamer brain's like, yeah, I can get strapped in. Why am I getting strapped out? What lets me out of this? But again, you can look around for all of the extra doors and buttons and levers that you want to, but non-progression. You sit in the chair, or you might as well, if you turn off the computer and go to the park, because this is the game. That's the story. Sit in the chair. And you start to go unconscious, because you are expanding, your consciousness expanding out of your body into the local psychic scape, into the representation on the psychic plane of everything that is happening here. So you get the effect of your physical eyes closing as your mind's expanding. But as your physical eyes are closing, Alma shows up. And jump back earlier in the game. There's the fight between old Alma and young Alma, and she's trying to help you and she's trying to kill you, and there's a scene. Because you keep coming around corners and seeing this glowing ball of light like a train approaching you down a tunnel, and you blink and it's gone, because that's some psychic thing that you're perceiving. But the last one of those you see, it happens 4 or 5 times. You come around a corner and you've been encountering old Alma and young Alma, and they have either helped you to a point or almost murdered you to a point, and you come around the corner and there's this wind and this screaming in the distance, and you can't tell if it's the wind that is screaming or the screaming that sounds like wind, and the light is close, like you're about to get hit by that train. And then on the left side of your screen is young Alma, and on the right side of your screen is older Alma. And in the midst of this screaming, blinding light coming down on top of you like a train about to hit, the two Almas walk to the middle of the screen and vanish into the light, and you blink. That scene has stayed with me ever since. Sometimes when I close my eyes, when I'm looking through my brain for something disturbing or inspirational, it's right there. Something happened. Back to the end game. You're consciousness expands to this psychic scape, and there's this arbitrary video game. There are 3 anchors that must be destroyed in order for everything to be unlocked and fulfilled. And the other guy who is trying to get Alma's power and free Alma is in there screaming at you. It should have been me. She loves me, not you. And he is firing at you, and it is your controls are a little bit different because you're in a different kind of time and space, and you've got to fight your way through, and you get to these points, and every time you kill him, he just comes back, because this isn't the person. You can really die in here, but he can't, because there's a different way that he's linked into it. And you break one of the anchors, and you turn around, and you're back in your physical body for a moment, and Alma's right there. And you want to stay there and struggle free or something, but now your eyes closed down again. Back on the psychic scape, guys shooting at you, guys yelling at you, guys trying to murder the crap out of you, and you blow him away a couple of times. You shoot him with something big enough so that he's going to be down for a few seconds, and you get to the second anchor, and you wreck it, and you turn around, and you're back in your physical body. And Alma's screaming. She's right there on top of you. She's strapped into the chair, and she's screaming, and you're starting to go, that didn't sound like a bad scream. And you're back in the psychic plane. The guy is right there, and he is attacking you with everything he's got. There's weapons all over the place, because whatever you imagine happens, and he grabs it, and he starts firing at you, and you grab a weapon, you're firing at him, and it's this insane ducking around cover of haunted trees and mausoleums and stuff, and you're blazing away, and you manage to drop something on it for long enough. You get to the third anchor, and you wreck the third anchor and come back to your physical body. And Alma is there screaming more vigorously. You can't see details. It's all hazy. It's all fuzzy. That's recognizably Alma's skin that you're seeing, and recognizably Alma's form moving around, recognizably Alma's voice. Get back into the psychic plane, and the anchors are gone. The guy can't maintain his longevity in the psychic plane anymore, so you've got one big old fight left to have, and it is rough, but if you take him down, you take him down. And this guy has been the thorn in your side for this entire game, and a little bit of the last one, so you're about due a little payback, and you grab the biggest thing you can, and you put it in his face, and you pull the trigger until the face stops being a thing. You wake up. You wake up, you come out of it. You're still strapped down. Room looks empty. You look around, and Alma, the older Alma, the real form of Alma, the undead, desiccated, emaciated Alma, walks in front of you, slowly, running her hands over her belly, which is swollen in pregnancy, looking at you and smiling. Credits. That gamer sense that if I sit down into that chair and I get strapped in, bad things are going to happen, that was pretty much accurate, but you're on rails. That's how the game's going to go. You're going to get into that chair and you're going to get strapped down. You're just going to stop playing the game. You have the agency of being able to stop playing the game at any point in time. But if you want to see what's going on ahead, you're going to play the game. And the stuff on the psychic scape apparently has warped and shifted your sense of time. We think, don't know. There's a lot of questions here. While you were strapped into the chair and your mind was elsewhere in the psychic escape, Alma came out and essentially violated you and became pregnant with your child. remembering that, of course, you are hers as well. So there's like 15 intensely uncomfortable, triggery, massively difficult things to deal with happening all at once. I hate it and I love it. If that hadn't have been an interactive experience, if I'd have been watching it in a movie or reading it in a story, it would have been one thing. I wouldn't have been as invested. I could have read that and understood how disturbing that was and walked away. I could have watched that in a movie and been disturbed by it. But up to that point in the game, I had a certain amount of agency in what happened to that character. I could govern it and control it and walk it around. And I want to kill that guy. I'm going to do this first, then that. I'm going to take this corridor, not that corridor. There were rails, but they did a really good job of hiding them, of making you think, nah, maybe you can actually handle this. You know, I talked about in Bioshock how they managed to once again get me to panic fire a couple of times in F.E.A.R. In F.E.A.R, every so often they would get me to panic fire whole clips of ammo. They'll get me to panic fire, reload, and continue panic firing. The atmosphere and the illusion of choice and everything was so well done that when that end came, it was jarring and disturbing, and it made you have to think it through. I spent a while online after the end of that going, what the hell just happened? You know, looking in forums and stuff. I wasn't the only one. What the hell just happened to me? Did what happened to my character, did what I think happened to my character just happen to my character? What the hell? I have seen F.E.A.R 3 in the store. I have seen it online. I have it in a number of wish lists. I haven't bought it. I've read, you know, some summaries of how it starts and what the game is about in general. I haven't read any full plot summaries or seen any playthroughs. I played F.E.A.R 2 over maybe 5 or 6, 7 years ago. I'm not ready yet. For a game to affect you that deeply, for it to be something that is so viscerally disturbing. That's a horror game. That's a game where you thought you were in control. You thought you had power and choices, and in the end, you didn't. A good horror movie. A good horror movie is one where that you get a couple of shocks, but more than shocks, you get this existential feeling of dread. There's no escaping this. That's a terrible situation. There's no way out. And sometimes there is. Sometimes it's awesome, and you get that elation of, well, last person's out, but that bad guy's still back there someplace. Oh, he'll be back. And sometimes you get the whole Devil's Reign thing, where, hey, everything's awesome. No, nothing's awesome. That feeling at the end of F.E.A.R 2. That questioning absolutely everything about what your character is at, what your character is doing, and what the hell happens next. And that complete inability to actually find out. Well, that, yeah, still my favorite to this day. I've played a lot of horror computer games, but yeah, that one is going to stick with me forever because I remember a lot of my scares and moments in other games. And like with most BioShock fans, if you start singing Jesus Loves Me off key in an echoey room, I get all twitchy. But yeah, and it's still either it's the coffee or the memories, maybe a combination of the two. Little palpitation there. Well, thank you for following me along on this one. If you liked the video, give me a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, give me a thumbs down. Feedback is feedback. Questions, your own experiences with the F.E.A.R game franchise or other horror computer games. Things you'd like to hear me talk about, whatever. Leave me a comment down below. I'll love getting a comment. You'll love leaving me one. If you really dug the video and would like to see these videos when they come out, hit subscribe. If you haven't subscribed already, why not? If you do subscribe, don't forget to hit the little notification bell that lets you actually know when my subscriptions come out. If you really dug the video, I invite you to hit me up on my Patreon page at www.patreon.com/ScottCorum and consider donating. Absolutely anything helps and allows me to make better videos more often. In the meantime, thank you so much for watching. Tomorrow's is going to be interesting. I'm Scott Corum. This is what has mattered to me, and I will see you next time on the next Matters of DeCorum.